Hi guys, I'm Amberly.
And I'm Beth.
And hopefully you guys just watched the virtual tour of our exhibit, This Earth.
What was your favorite part of the tour, Amberly?
My favorite part was actually the series of watercolors that takes us on that journey of the sun throughout the day by artist Patricia Watwood. What about you, Beth?
I really liked the big clay piece with all the textures and all the different glazes. I just think it's really cool looking.
What were some of you guys' favorite pieces? Now that we've kind of discussed the exhibit a little bit, the project that we're going to be doing focuses on kind of that grid like we talked about in that virtual tour by artist Mark Guschelbauer. And this piece, you should each have a square that your teacher gave you, and they should have a number on the back. And that number will help you figure out where it goes in relation to everybody else's pieces once they're done. And everyone should have a white square, or 2 if you're in grades 3 through 12. To do this, you will also need either crayons or pastels and some texture plates. All right, so go ahead and take your little square that you have, and you're gonna take a really good look at it and kind of focus on some of the bigger shapes and what different colors you're gonna need, and go ahead and pick them out. So for mine, I've got some oranges, yellows, greens, maybe a little bit of purple in there, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab those.
And mine is a lot of pinks, there's some blue, and some yellow, so I'm gonna use those.
Okay, now we're each gonna grab a texture plate, and with these texture plates, you're gonna place your blank white square on top of it. And when we start coloring with these texture plates underneath, it really gives another dimension to the piece that you have, and it kind of goes in keeping with the fact that we as humans can have an impact on nature, just like us placing these texture plates has an impact on the image that we have. So go ahead and you guys can pick out your colors and start drawing.
So we're trying to make our big square look like the little square, right?
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly like that. And while you're coloring, if you finish one big section, you can even go ahead and if you're done with that section, you can switch out and use a different texture just to give it some different forms for different parts. And you're really welcome to make this yours as much as you want and try it out with some different colors, some different line work. Really go crazy, have fun, make sure that you are paying attention to those shapes and colors, and do what you can to make sure that when you line it up with the rest of the class's pieces, that it'll really work well together.
So what texture do you have?
Mine's actually kind of this honeycomb shape. And a fun thing about these plates, actually, is that if you flip it over, you get a different texture on the back side of it. So if you don't want to switch plates, you can even just flip it over and it'll give you something totally new.
Cool.
And you do actually get a different texture from it if you use like the side of your crayon versus the tip of it. So that might be something to experiment with as you're coloring your square.
Some of these textures are pretty organic, like one of them looks like wood, one of them looks like yours looks like honeycomb, and then some of them are pretty geometric, like this one has like 5 pointed stars, and the lines are really straight, and it's more of like a man-made pattern, so you can kind of play around with what looks natural and what doesn't. think my piece is part of the sky. What do you think your piece is part of?
So I think that mine is actually part of like the rock formation and the foreground where it's like the dirt and the plants and the pathway and all of that stuff. And I've got a little bit of these purple mountains in the background, which is kind of fun too. So as we are coloring these, what are some different projects that you think of from the exhibit that this kind of reminds you of?
Well, I think that it's gonna look like a landscape with the sky and the rocks and the mountains.
Right.
And there were a couple of different landscapes. It reminds me of the watercolors, like my sky's really pink and orange, like the sunset or the sunrise in the watercolor paintings. What do you think?
This one mostly reminds me of that grid project by Marcus Goshelbauer, because obviously we've kind of sectioned off this landscape into a grid shape and we're looking at each of those individual pieces.
I'm gonna try a different texture. It's like dots.
You guys, don't be afraid to switch plates with your friends, try something new, mix colors, do whatever you want to make this feel like yours and find a fun way to represent the square that you've been given. All right, mine's almost done. What about yours?
I think mine's done.
Okay, awesome.
I'll talk about my favorite parts. I like the dot texture. I think that one stood out a lot. I started with the stars, but you can't really see them as much anymore, but they're still kind of there in the pink. I didn't mean to mix the blue and the orange, but now I have this kind of greenish brown streak, which is kind of fun. And then yeah, even though mine's really simple, it's just the different colors of the sky, I had fun trying to mix the colors and get as close as possible to what's actually in my square.
That's awesome. So mine is done, and even though it doesn't look exactly like the square, it's got kind of the same basic idea, and as the person creating this, you have all of the artistic license that you want. You can make it yours in any way. Now that you guys have finished your squares, if you're K through 2, you guys are going to go ahead and if you want to pause the video right after this, we're going to have an image of what it should look like, and you guys are going to go ahead and have your teachers help you guys tape your guys' pieces into one big final composition. And for grades 3 through 12, we are going to go ahead and continue on with this project and take it up just a little bit into another dimension. And for those in K through 2, thanks so much for joining us. For those of you that are grades 3 through 12, now you guys should also have some scissors and some glue sticks, because you guys are going to take your completed colored squares and you're gonna use your scissors to cut anywhere from 1 to 4 different lines through your piece at different angles, and make sure that when you do that you're not cutting all the way through. You want your piece to stay one whole piece. So I'm gonna cut at least 3 different lines.
I'm gonna cut 2 different shapes. So
All right, once you've cut your lines into your square, you're gonna take those cut parts and you're gonna fold them to different angles. And it will give us what we call negative space, which we talked about a little bit in that virtual tour that you guys watched. But just as a refresher, Beth, what's negative space?
So negative space is the space where there isn't anything. So when I fold these two triangles out, now there's a hole, and even though there's nothing there, I kind of think about filling it in with my mind or imagine what could be there, and it creates something interesting to look at.
Okay, now that you guys have cut and folded your pieces, you're gonna use those glue sticks to glue on the flat back of this, and you're gonna glue it to your other white square.
So we're only gluing the parts that aren't folded.
So make sure to line up those corners, those edges, so that you really get it on there.
Cool, so now the negative space is the white space from the second piece of paper, and then the triangles that fold out kind of create their own shapes and shadows.
Yeah, which kind of reminds me of that piece with the birds.
Yeah, like all the different birds at different angles casting different shadows.
Yeah,
That's pretty
exactly. And now that we've done that, we're actually gonna put this whole composition back together, all together as a class. And your teachers should have some tape, and the numbers that are on the back of your squares will tell you where to line things up. And let's go ahead and show them what that looks like.
Okay, so mine goes right here in the sky.
And mine goes down here at the bottom with the rocks and the bushes. Awesome. Well, that is it for this composition, and now that you guys have finished it, you really have the opportunity to discuss this project as a class.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!